Hello, welcome to part 3 of 3 in making my cat doll. My name is Yibbi and this is Yibbi's Patchworks. Today I spent all morning editing this video. It was a big challenge trying to figure out just what I wanted to show and how I wanted to present it, but I think I'm getting a much better hang of it than when I first started. Everything was a little bit, challenging trying to record and spending a little bit of time setting up my camera and figuring out where and how I was going to record it on my desk. But now I'm thinking I'm getting kind of the vibe I really wanted to in the beginning. I know my first video was a little bit grainy and a little bit choppy, but now I have a better editing software and I'm just really excited to share this video with you because I wasn't even sure I would get to this point sharing my process, and it's just been so much fun. Right now, I'm just gathering my scraps together and taking the time to really pick out what colors I think suit her best. I've decided to name her Tulip, as when I got around to making her skirt and putting her all together, it just reminded me of a beautiful purple tulip flower, and I thought the name would be really fitting. I really love this color of her body. I think the smoky purple worked out so well. I remember when I first saw the fabric, it came in a little bundle of other purple fabrics, and this one in particular really stood out to me. And originally I was going to make a little dog with it, but I'm kind of glad I decided on a cat because it's very moody, it's very emotional, and I don't know, I love it, especially with her name. To me, it goes from a little too moody to calm and serene. And while choosing her patches this time, I decided to really think about what would complement that smoky color the best, despite really only using the scraps that I have on hand, as well as them being the same ones that I've been using for my other dolls. I just wanted to pick out some specific ones that I thought would bring out the purple. And I also started cutting them into squares, which is a little bit different than what I usually do. Before, I would just use whatever the shape the scrap was originally, but I think by making them into squares, it makes the slow stitching a bit easier and cleaner as well. It's a little bit more aesthetically pleasing. I also chose not to add every scrap I cut and really just picked out the ones I liked the most, which was a big challenge. I really liked all these colors and I thought they all fit her very well, but I primarily chose to stick with some yellows, reds, and some whites, and a little bit of baby blue. Overall, it didn't take as long as I thought it was. I thought it was gonna take a lot longer than this, but then I decided to go for a much more simple look. As around this part, I started trying to think about what her skirt was going to look like. All of my cat dolls come with skirts because it's not really part of the look itself. It's more of a complement to the cat doll, where I find a skirt is a great way. It's just a simple small piece of clothing that I could change and make her a little bit more doll-like. And I really like to show off the chest and the body because that's where a lot of the patchwork usually is. Some of my cat dolls have little hearts on their chest. Some of them have patchwork on their arms, so I just think a skirt is a nice little touch. And I would eventually like to make a few different skirts just to be able to swap them out. Maybe have like 1 or 2 pairs for each cat doll so that they have their own little wardrobe. And like I said, it makes them a little bit more doll-like and gives them a little bit more personality. But I'm kind of still limited on some material, so I might have to wait until I do that. So far, I've made about 5 of these dolls, though one of them was actually a little dog, but I used roughly the same pattern with a few different touches. I made it a little wider, and I gave her away as a gift to a family friend, and she was so ecstatic to see it, and it made me so happy. And it was kind of one of the things that inspired me in the beginning to make this channel, because these dolls are so simple, they're so cute, and I just think that they make really great gifts, and I just love making them. With each one, I feel as though I'm learning a little something new about sewing, each time I make one, I have a better idea of how long these actually take me to make, and I start to feel a little bit more and more confident. With Tulip here, I would say she's my best. She was not necessarily the best, as in, design. I have one named Chantal who I really love the way she came out. She's very patchy, and her skirt is very flowy. But what I like about Tulip is that she's very sturdy. Out of all of my dolls, she is the most well put together, I would say, when it comes to sewing and technique. And she doesn't really have any holes in her seams, or she's not falling apart like my very first doll. And I'm very proud, and I think that is a lot of progress. And the more I make them, the more I'm starting to contemplate selling them online. But because I think, I'm still learning, I do feel a little bit hesitant. I think maybe I might be a little bit self-conscious of them at the moment. But don't get me wrong, I still very much love each doll that I make, but I know I might need a little bit more practice until they are kind of a little bit more put together. And I think eventually, once I get to a point where I think they're not going to be so patchy, that I think that they would be perfect for a small shop. So in the future, you might be able to get your hands on one of these little guys. I already have my next doll planned out. They're gonna be a little bigger in size, and right now I'm working on a mock-up dummy to see how it'll turn out. If I like it, then my next video will probably be a cleaner version of that, and I'm really excited to share whatever I have next. Even if I don't necessarily have a solid idea, I think there's just something nice about making something new from scratch. I have a little sketchbook right now where I'm keeping all of my designs inside of, and kind of plotting out, well, how am I going to make this, how does this shape work. And I find that's very much the challenge with dolls, is that they seem so simple when you think about them. You just sew two pieces together and stuff it, and it's a doll. But a lot of them have these different sizes and dimensions, and sewing a sphere was one of the hardest things I've ever done. It came out very pumpkin like the first couple times, I'm not gonna lie, but now I have a much better idea of it, and now I can sew an actual circular doll head, which I'm really excited about. One of my favorite parts about making these dolls is adding the embroidery. I personally love making plant patterns, as I love flowers, I love to draw plants, I like to garden when I can. Right now I'm growing some tomato plants, and I'm really excited because they just started flowering, and I think that pretty soon I'm going to have some really delicious tomatoes, and I'm really excited about that. And so when it comes to embroidery, I wanted to incorporate that kind of love of floral patterns, especially considering her name is Tulip. I just thought it was a really great touch. Embroidery is usually my final process, as I like to go over all of my slow stitching to add a little bit of new texture over the top. But I didn't go over the patches because I knew her skirt was going to be pretty long, and I didn't want to spend too much time working on something that I knew was going to be covered up. But as for her face, I decided to keep it simple, just because I wanted her expression to be interpreted as whatever emotion the viewer gives her. I chose really simple green button eyes, as same yellow I used for the flowers on her head to make her mouth. Part of the reason I started sewing is because I wanted to learn how to make my own patterns so that all my dolls felt unique. These cat dolls in particular, despite having the same pattern, they each have something special and new about them, whether it's the sewing technique or the way I stuff them. They just all have something different. Tulip's, for example, was her patchwork is going to be that square look that I've been talking about, and I really like the way it came out. And now that I'm doing it, I think I'll continue to do it with the next few dolls I do until maybe I get a little bored and want to go a little crazy again. But for the most part, I'm trying to keep it simple so that each doll is not only clean and crisp, but also I want to have and develop a specific style I have for them so that they're more recognizable as my own works. I actually used this fabric for a skirt on a different doll, but I was just so in love with it. I really thought it would go well with her colors, so I just decided to use it again. I made this skirt by measuring her waist and doubling it up, as well as measuring her length and making it just a little bit longer than she was. Though I will say it came out a little bit too long, but it actually holds her up when she stands, which I think is really neat. So I'm not too upset about that. I do wish I spent a little bit more time sewing it, but I think at this point I was just getting a little impatient because I was so excited to finish her. I used a back stitch along the waist with some elastic I cut to size. Then I sewed the hem with a running stitch. And now that I made it though, I wish I had used the running stitch along the elastic because I really like the way it looks. but the backhand stitch is more secure in my opinion. After that, I just pulled the elastic to be a little tighter than her waist and knotted it together before sewing in the final seam. I'm still learning how to make doll clothes and I'm not exactly the best at it, but I am still very, very happy with the results. Afterwards, as kind of a signature on all of my cat dolls, I added a bow tie around her neck because I think it really brings out the look altogether. It makes them look a little fancy. And then I'm done. And this is Tulip. I really hope you like this video. Like I said, I'm really excited to make more content in the future, and I hope you stick around to see what's next. I hope you have a wonderful day, stay safe, and keep up with whatever you're doing.